Oh, hey there friends! In case you're wondering what I'm holding in my hands, well, I'm holding some of the brand new releases from the House of Paris corner. In here I have Appletini, which is supposedly inspired by Killian's Apple Brandy on the Rocks. I also have the new Rifaaqat Adorn flanker, which is supposedly a very heavy sort of an inspiration and twist on the YSL Tuxedo DNA. And the last one is called Regal Reserve, part of the Charuto line, and this is supposedly inspired by rolled tobacco from Mawj. If you're interested how this tree smells, well, I'm interested in the same thing. So let me unbox them today, let me unpack them today and try them for the first time. First of all guys, I really do hope that all of you are doing well. I'm going to start off this first impression video with Rifaaqat Adorn from Paris corner, and I'm really curious to see how this one smells. The box design and the packaging seems to be very similar to the other member of the Rifaaqat line, which is called simply Rifaaqat, and is again a clone of an YSL fragrance. In that case it's Baby Cat, and yes, the bottle actually looks exactly the same with a slightly different accents. Here you have a totally blacked out bottle. Okay, let's check out the sprayer and see how Rifaaqat Adorn actually smells. Okay, pressurized sprayer. Lately it seems that I've been running into some quite a bit of Middle Eastern fragrances with pressurized sprayers, and I really like that. And now onto the scent. Yeah, I can already pick up in the air that this is similar to Tuxedo. And it is quite similar to Tuxedo, but at least in the opening this feels less spicy than the sharp spicy opening that Tuxedo has. Definitely carries that very similar DNA. But this feels a little bit more woody. It feels a little bit sweeter. Quite a bit sweeter actually right off the bat in the opening, and also maybe there's a hint of a boozy note in here. I miss this sort of sharp spicy opening of the original fragrance. This definitely feels a lot less spicy compared to the original fragrance. Definitely feels more woodsy, feels a little bit sweeter. And actually this is a little bit like a different kind of sweetness. The original has a lot of vanillic sweetness. This one doesn't feel so strong on the vanillic sweetness. Maybe there's a little bit more of ambery sweetness in this particular one. It's more woodsy, but again seems to be pretty similar, at least in the air, to to Tuxedo. But up close it actually feels quite different. The next one in line for my first impressions will be Charuto Regal Reserve. As I said, this is supposedly inspired by Mawj's royal tobacco. Now it's been a while since I've tried royal tobacco, so I won't probably be able to fully compare them, but I'm really interested to see how Regal Reserve smells, because tobacco is one of my favorite fragrance notes, usually. The box design is pretty similar to the other members of the Charuto line of fragrances. And I think the bottle design as well is very similar, although here you have this kind of color combination. That's actually the color of the bottle is like this grayish color. That's very similar to what the original fragrance from Mawj actually comes colored in the original bottle. Let's check out the sprayer. Okay, the sprayer in here is not as good as the Rifaaqat one, not pressurized, but still pretty decent sprayer. And let's see how this smells. In the air actually smells quite fresh, which is surprising. It smells as if it has something like I don't know, like a lemon or bergamot note, something fresh, citrusy. Also something like a basil note. It feels mildly spicy in the opening, a bit sweet, but quite fresh. Actually, I'm really surprised at how fresh the opening of this one is. Now, as I said, I've tried royal tobacco. The last time I tried royal tobacco was quite a while, and I don't remember it smelling this fresh in the opening. It feels a bit resinous, but definitely quite bright, and sort of even something like a mint note. It feels really fresh. and aromatic actually. Maybe there's some rose note in here as well. The more this time passes, actually this starts to lose that very fresh opening. It feels a bit sweet, but more like ambery sweetness in here. I can't say that I pick up much of a tobacco note, which is a surprise for me. I was expecting this to be actually heavier on the tobacco note. It's quite sweet, quite floral and fresh at the same time, and really I'm still not picking up much of a tobacco note. Now I'll let this one sit for a while because I'm really curious to see if the tobacco note that this supposedly has actually comes true on the dry down of the fragrance itself. But so far it's quite surprising how this one smells, because this feels a lot fresher that I remember the original fragrance actually smelling. And now let's check out the last one, Appletini, which again, as I said, is supposedly inspired by Kilian's apple brandy on the rocks. Let's see how this one smells. The presentation seems to be very nice. I think this is how you open up, yep, this is how you open up the box, and the bottle sits inside. And the bottle is actually quite similar to the original fragrance. And I also think that Paris Corner have a new member of this very same line, which is cloning Angel Share as well. I still don't have that one. I hope that I'm going to get my hands soon on that one as well, just so that I can check it out. But yeah, this is the bottle design, and it's actually really nice and very similar to the original fragrance. Let's check out the sprayer and see how Appletini smells. This one is slightly better than the Charuto one, still not as good as the Rifaaqat Adorn sprayer. Alright, interesting. The opening here seems to be quite light and fresh, and at the same time sweet. The apple note in here, the green apple note, is actually quite strong in the opening, and I kinda like it. There's a pineapple note in here for sure as well, which plays a support role to the apple note. There's a bit of an vanillic sweetness that's more like an undertone and plays of a support role. And there's definitely, you know, like a boozy note in here. But the boozy note doesn't feel as dark and as dense as the one that I get from the original fragrance. The opening here feels like more fruity, more airy, and a fresher take on the original DNA. It's quite different actually in the opening. I can't say that it's very close compared to the original fragrance from Kilian. But it's not a bad opening. And in fact, the more time passes, I think that the pineapple note is starting to take over the lead role as the sort of the most prominent fruity note in the opening of this fragrance. Still though, a nice undertone of vanillic sweetness, a nice undertone of a boozy note, and feels quite fresh. There's a bergamot note in here as well that adds even more freshness. This is an interesting take on the original DNA. Again, I think this is more like a twist rather than a straight up clone, just like Rifaaqat Adorn is with Tuxedo. And at the end, I just wanted to quickly share a few words on the early dry downs of each and every fragrance that I tried. I'm going to start in the same order with Rifaaqat Adorn. As I said, this is cloning or being heavily inspired by YSL Tuxedo, but it feels more of a twist, not a straight up clone. This felt less spicy in the opening. On the dry down, again, feels less spicy. It has less of an emphasis on that patchouli note that the original fragrance is known for. This feels a little bit more woody on the dry down. I still think there is a hint of a boozy note in here, maybe a hint of a tobacco note. Also, I don't pick up much of a rose note. There is a rose note here, but it's not as strong as you get with the original fragrance. And also, I think this has more of an ambery sweetness on the dry down compared to the original one, which has more of a vanillic sweetness. All around, this is like a heavy twist on the original DNA. It's not super close scent-wise, but also I think carries pretty good quality, and I think it will have pretty good performance. In fact, all three fragrances seems to be quite strong, at least from my first impressions. But yeah, that's so far what I think about Rifaaqat Adorn. Not a bad take on the Tuxedo DNA, actually quite interesting compared to most of the straight up clones that are out on the markets. The next one will be Charuto Regal Reserve. Now I sprayed this one on skin just because I was curious to see if it will be different compared to on paper, and it is a little bit different. On skin, this actually kind of has a tobacco note, which is slightly stronger. In fact, on paper, I pretty much picked up no tobacco note. On skin, there is a tobacco note in here. This still feels quite a bit fresher compared to what I remember the original fragrance smelling. And also feels quite sweet on the dry down. Feels kind of resinous and balsamic a little bit. It becomes a little bit more woody on the dry down as well. Still though, it's an interesting take, and again I think this is more like a heavy twist on the raw tobacco DNA rather than the straight up clone. Seems to be pretty interesting take on that DNA, and I think this probably will be one of those scents that actually will need some time to settle and macerate before it reaches its full potential. And moving on to the last fragrance, which is Appletini. Again, I sprayed this one on skin because I was curious how this smells on skin. And there are a few differences compared to what I picked up on a paper strip. On skin, the strongest note in here right from the first spray was the pineapple note. On paper, it felt more like the apple note is stronger, with the pineapple note playing more of a support role, but actually on skin it's the other way around. It also feels a little bit more boozy on skin than it felt you know, on the paper strip. On the dry down, this actually becomes a little bit sweeter compared to the opening. Still stays quite boozy. And compared to the original fragrance, this feels more fruity, feels sweeter, feels slightly fresher as well. All around, again, another twist on the original DNA rather than a straight up clone. Up close feels a little bit synthetic in the first few minutes, which is to be expected, but in the air actually smells pretty nice. And if I have to pick up one fragrance that actually I kind of like the most out of the three that I tried for the first time today, it will be the Appletini one. And so guys, in today's first impression video, I tried for the first time three brand new fragrances from the brand of Paris Corner. Rifaaqat Adorn, which is a heavy twist on the YSL Tuxedo DNA. Charuto Regal Reserve, which is another heavy twist on the unwashed raw tobacco DNA. And Appletini, which seems to be another twist on, in this case, on by Kilian's Apple Brandy on the Rocks. I hope that you found this video interesting or entertaining. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in the next one. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.